So we'll move on then to the next quality. Let's talk about respect. I call this the Aretha principle because Aretha Franklin had a great song about respect. But what's the line in that? R-E-S-P-E-C-T, find out what it means to me. Right? That's the key. How do we know what respect means to the person that we're standing in front of? Because what one person finds disrespectful, another person is completely comfortable with. People feel differently about what respect is. And so you have to do what? With this specific customer. You've gone into a customer's place of business, introduced yourself, trying to get to know them. What do?
Get a feel for them? Kind of feel them out a little bit?
Feel them out? What else can you do? How do you do that? How do you get a feel for a customer? Ask questions. Perfect. That's exactly what we're going to do. Ask questions. Help them, draw them out. Find out what's important to them. What do they enjoy? And that's, of course, the natural part of the selling process, but what we want to pay attention to is what do they find respectful, what do they find disrespectful. So things we might think about. The first thing is our dress, the way we're dressed. Now, when I first got into the oil business, I came from the banking industry, and people will tell you when I first came on my first interview, this is how I was dressed for my interview to go be a sales rep for, actually not a sales rep, actually a warehouseman for an oil business. And the first thing that I was told was, if you dress like that, you're going to scare our customers. They're not used to seeing somebody in a suit and with a tie on. And that's very appropriate when you go out in your sales talking to customers. What do you find when you talk to your customers? When you go into your customer's place of business, how are they dressed? That's what we pay attention to, right? Maybe a little more casual, a little more laid back, but we want to be careful because is there such a thing as too casual, too laid back? What do we want to keep in mind? What's the important principle, do you think?
Common ground, so they relate to who you are.
You want to fit in. You want to fit in with that customer and what they consider respectful. You see, because what they consider respectful might include the way you're dressed. If you come in overly casual, then their perception is you don't respect them as a business person. You're just there to make a social call, and maybe how that comes across. Another thing to keep in mind would be our language. Now, you're in the petroleum industry. The petroleum industry is not known for its high standards of language, right? If you've spent any time with the driver of a fuel truck, you'll find that out in about 30 seconds is what it takes to find that out. But what about you as a salesperson or as a customer service person? Now, does this mean that you can never swear in front of a customer? Do you think that's what it means? There you go. There you go. Don't be the first one to tell an off-color joke. Don't be the first one to use inappropriate language or what some people might consider inappropriate language. But find out what that customer, what they're comfortable with. If they're comfortable with it and you're comfortable with it, fine. Do what you will. But don't approach a customer with that. I used to work with a fellow who, he couldn't help himself. He would get on the phone with little old ladies. He was selling heating oil. Get on the phone with little old ladies, and it was all kinds of colorful words peppered throughout his speech with an older lady. Had no idea that what he was doing might be offensive to him. The fact that he hung up the phone one time and asked him, so do people ever react badly to you talking that way to him? Talking to him? He had no clue that that might be offensive to somebody. So you want to keep that in mind. And think about, is this going to come across offensively to the person that I'm talking to? The other thing you want to be respectful of is your customer's time. Okay? You are, believe it or not, an unwelcome presence in their day. Nobody wants to talk to a salesperson. That's just the way that American society is wired. We don't like talking to salespeople. And so if you show up unannounced and demand to have a piece of their time, how are people going to treat you? Yeah, they're going to try to brush you off and get rid of you as quickly as possible, even though they may have a real need for what you have to offer. They're going to try to get rid of you very quickly. So what can we do to overcome that?
Hopefully, the appointment.
Make an appointment if it's possible. Now, that's an important thing to keep in mind, because some people, again, what we're concerned about is what respect means to me. At times, a person is not going to want to have an appointment. They're not that kind of person. They don't structure their day that way. They just say, oh, stop by and see me sometime on Tuesday. I'll be here all day. That's fine. But for other people, their time is very valuable to it, and they structure it, and they treat it like a commodity. And as such, you're going to have to ask their permission to take up some of their time. Now, that doesn't mean you have to call ahead for an appointment. It can be very simple. As you go into their place of business, you meet the owner, you can see they're busy. Hey, I'd like to make an appointment to come back when you have some time to talk about X, Y, Z. Okay? You don't have to call ahead. Don't feel like you have to become a cold caller, setting appointments ahead of time. But make sure that you're respectful of their time. One thing that I want you to treat, though, as universal. We've talked about finding out what respect means to the individual customer, but one thing that I'm gonna present to you as universal. If you are in front of a customer, where should your cell phone be? How about in your car? Don't even take it in, because it's a temptation. It's a temptation to interrupt the conversation that you're having with that customer. Because if it rings, if you're like me, I think I put it on vibrate, I think I turn it off, but inevitably it starts to ring in that situation, right? When I think I've turned it off, I've done what I think I'm supposed to do. It still rings, but what's your temptation? To answer. It's almost a habitual. Oh, excuse me, I'm just going to take this real quick. What have you just done? What have you just told your customer?
Not that important.
He's not that important. He's not that important. And I'm going to say the same thing about call waiting. Call waiting is a wonderful feature. It's a very useful tool. But if you're on the phone with a customer, don't put them on hold and answer another call, because it sends the same message. Now, it's different in an office setting. Sometimes you've got 8 lines ringing and you have to say, excuse me, I'm going to put you on hold if that's okay for just 1 second, and then I'll put this other call on hold. I'll be right back to you. But if you're in your car traveling from appointment to appointment, you're talking to a customer on the phone, the other line rings, what else do we have that's a beautiful tool?
Voicemail.
Voicemail. Let it go to voicemail and get back to it as soon as possible. That's showing respect for your customers. Okay, so the important thing again about respect, find out what it means to who? To me. Okay. Me is your customer.